Hey, Stephen. Hello, friends of Prairie View A&M University. Thank you for joining Cohort 13 Conversations, Higher ED Finance Series. Tonight's episode focuses on policy and strategies for effective budgeting and financing for an ideal higher education institution. The context of our conversation is centered around universities like Prairie View A&M University, who we know are designed to respond, react, serve, and solve societal issues through its system-wide land-grant university mission of teaching, research, and service. I am your host, Natriez Peterson, doctoral student in the Educational Leadership Program, and here with me is my brother from another mother, my cohort member, Stephen Akabu. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Hey, Nate.
How are you? Man, are you ready to kick off tonight's conversation?
Oh, yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right. We are excited, guys. Joining us in this much-needed conversation are our two esteemed panelists, Dean Gerald D'Souza and Professor / Houston City Council member, Dr. Tiffany Thomas. Hello, guys. How are you? So let's start with our bios first. I'll start with Dr. Dean D'Souza. Dr. Dean D'Souza is a man of many hats who served as the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Human Sciences and also the Director of Land Grant Programs at Prairie View A&M University. Prior to this appointment, he served as a professor and director of Division of Resource Economics and Management at West Virginia University, also a land-grant university. Dean D'Souza is a great individual. He's passionate about taking the university to the people. He's passionate about our students. He currently holds a BS in agricultural sciences from India. He also holds a master and Ph.D. in agricultural economics from Mississippi State University, L State. I also graduated from Mississippi State. Dr. Dean D'Souza is a Fulbright scholar, visiting scholar in many other countries, and he served as different sabbatical appointments in Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He has mentored over 1,000 students and served as an investigator on grants totaling more than $5 million and published over 150 scholarly articles. He has been a recipient of the Outstanding Teacher, Research, and Service Award. Talk about the land-grant university mission. This man is a living example. Most recent, he was chosen to receive the Albert Nelson Lifetime Achievement Award. Give it up for my dean, Dr. Dean D'Souza. What's up, Gerald? How are you? Oh, okay. Next up, I have my comrade, Stephen, who will introduce Professor and Councilwoman Tiffany D. Thomas. Stephen, take us away.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Stephen Asiabokhae, and I am a doctoral student of educational leadership at the PVAMU University, Whitlow R. Green College of Education. I am a doctoral research assistant with the Office of Graduate Studies. Today, I have the singular opportunity of introducing our second distinguished panelist in the person of Professor Tiffany Thomas. She is the chair of the Housing and Community Affairs Committee, which oversees solid waste management, housing and community development, homeless initiatives, and veteran affairs. She is also a member of the Budget and Fiscal Affairs, Ethics, Elections, Council Government Regulations, and Neighborhood Affairs, and the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committees. In addition to her service on council, she is a tenured development officer and program coordinator, and also an assistant professor of the community development program housed in the School of Architecture at the Prairie View A&M University. Ladies and gentlemen, she is no other person than Professor Tiffany Thomas.
Yay, Professor Thomas. All right, guys, thank you for those introductions. Right now, we'll take a commercial break and we'll get ready to dive right into our questions. All right, see you guys.
Even though there is so much against us,
you will see. Choose to protect myself and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
Because it's going to take all of us thinking about one another.
And even with my face covered, you will see me.
You will see me as a mother, a wife, a friend.
As an athlete who gave everything to the game I love.
As a father, leading by example.
As a sister, as a champion for my people.
You will see me finding a light in a dark time.
To unlock our creativity and push our craft.
You will see me demanding the space to tell the story.
As a man who knows that tough times don't last, but tough
wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us together.
All right, welcome back, guys. So we had an opportunity to introduce you all. If there's something that we left out, I want to kind of give you guys give the mic to you all to kind of introduce yourselves, to kind of elaborate on the bios, and just to tell everybody hi. All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Dean, can you unmute Dean?
Hey. So first of all, Nate, thank you so much for the invitation. Very much appreciate it. And Stephen, wonderful to make your acquaintance through the show. And Dr. Thomas, Tiffany, very pleased and an honor to be on the same panel with you. So thanks so much for the bio, Nate. You didn't leave anything out. Matter of fact, if anything, you embellished it. I'm not sure I guided 1,000 students, but it sounds good to me. Not formally anyway, certainly informally. Yeah, there have been several thousand, so pleased to have made an impact through our students. And I do want to say that Dr. Thomas is a great partner for us in the College of Ag and Human Sciences. Among other things, she is partnering with several of us in the college to work on the Healthy Houston Initiative, which was recently launched in the Houston community. So very pleased to be sharing the stage, if you will, with Dr. Thomas.
Oh, and likewise, I must be doing something right because I get to share space with Dean D'Souza. So this is a good night for me. Nate, good to see you. And Stephen, thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you guys. Let's dive in. So our first segment focuses on future financing and budgeting for academic programs and workforce. So question number one, this question is addressed to you, Dean. And of course, Dr. Thomas, I would love for you to follow up with your insight.
Sure.
So in plight of our nation's pandemic, civic unrest, and economic climate, uncertainty is sure to follow. Examining the future trends in student enrollment and academic programs, how can ideal institutions like Prairie View A&M universities, deans, professors, and policymakers allocate funding to create emerging and innovative academic programs that respond to today's workforce challenges and opportunity? Dean, take us away.
Well, I could write a thesis on that topic, if you will, Stephen. There's a lot of information, a lot of ground to cover. So, if nothing else, what this uncertainty, what these challenges have done, from my perspective, is to open up our eyes to the value of higher education in today's society. There is so much ignorance going around that clearly the value of not just a school education, but a higher education is paramount and an important part of advancing the society. Now, having said that, the issue is at what cost? And every day I have stories from students, from parents, and I read about them in the Chronicle of Higher Education, New York Times, and so on, about how parents are struggling with Parent Plus loans that they've taken out to finance their kids' education, that the students have taken out their own loans, and in some cases it's taking a lifetime to repay those loans. So the question is twofold. What can universities do? And what can students do? It's a partnership between universities and students. And of course, the third part of this element is society as a whole. So clearly, as a university, we have to prioritize what is important in terms of the future, which is looking 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. So clearly, not everything is important from the viewpoint of offering students a world-class education. However, there are so-called sacred cows and there are cash cows. So the cash cows will be things like engineering, architecture, nursing, which generates graduates to go out there and earn a high wage and repay the university in various ways, repay their loans, et cetera, et cetera. But the sacred cows are things like philosophy and languages and the humanities, which really put the rest of the university in proper perspective. So really, we can't have one without the other. And to some extent, one has to subsidize the other. So in that complex interplay of disciplines, we have to figure out some common ground to be able to reduce the cost of our education, because clearly the price of education, not just at Prairie View A&M University, but nationwide, has gone too high, judging from the fact that we have over $1 trillion in student debt nationally. So we have to bring that down. So we have to figure out ways to reduce the cost of an education, but within universities, figure out how to operate most efficiently. And that is a task force or 2 or 3 will take to figure that out. But there's a lot more ideas that I can put on the table, but I'll give Dr. Thomas an opportunity to share her insights.
Sure. I mean, very difficult to come behind you as a dean. You're on the front line of this conversation as we deal with the global pandemic and all of the impacts of that. And just a note about the student loans. I told a friend recently, I'm still paying on the same $35,000 from 2003, right? And still paying on it. And so we definitely need to respond to that. So I would like to approach the response to this question perhaps from an esoteric perspective. I think, as we celebrate the 130th year of the Morrill Act, that significant piece of legislation which was probably the most significant piece of legislation supporting the education of freed slaves. 1890 institutions such as Prairie View gave us the ability to have an extension. And Dean D'Souza and Nate, you can speak specifically to this, but I think and with the significance around that extension, it allowed the campus to go to the community and the benefits of that campus. So I think before we get to how do we create new programs and create new funding streams, we must inquire first of what the community is asking for. So you mentioned earlier about civil unrest and cultural unrest. There's a demand on historically Black colleges, particularly, to have academic programs that prepares the generation with rigor, with structure, and with accurate information about social justice, how you take social justice from an agriculture perspective, which there's a lot of space around that, to all the way to education, which are, conversations that you consistently have. So I think the benefit of the position that we are in as an 1890 institution, we have what many institutions don't have. We have the ability to take our brand and our research and the talent of our faculty and the energy of our students into the community. And I think as the Black Lives Matter conversation, the national narrative really freezes us to really think about what's happening in our communities, we get to ask ourselves if what we have been offering in the past is enough, right? So if we are going to remain in high demand, and if we are going to attract a different type of talent, and convince those that they need to pursue a graduate degree or a bachelor degree or finish their bachelor's degree, we must then provide them with an opportunity where they see themselves in a larger picture outside of perhaps traditional academic programs that I had limited options and I chose a path. And I think we're at a place where we can create something that has the support of the community because that's what they're asking for.
Thank you. I agree with you both. I think now is a great time for us to pivot, for us to tell that story. I work in the communities all the time. And, the number one thing people tell me is, I just learned about extension. You guys are the best kept secret. Well, we have to get out and tell our story. We have to spark conversations with our legislators, with our communities about the history of the land-grant university mission. And we have to move forward. And how we move forward is to cultivate our students, to inspire our students so they can be change makers. So this kind of leads us into our second question. So, as we look around, we see a lot that's happening, in particular in higher education, right? We see enrollment. We see a decline in enrollment. We see federal funding, shutdowns. We see a lot of academic programs. We're trying to question the validity of a lot of academic programs as we emerge into a new century. Because let's face it, we're not going to return to normal. So we have to find ways that we can pivot and grow with society through innovation and collaboration. So I want you guys to speak about strategies that ideal universities like Prairie View A&M University can develop to overcome this economic meltdown and decline in budget. What does this look like in your perspectives? Dean or Professor Thomas, you guys just take us away.
Oh, yeah, I think he was muted. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, so I'll be glad to get us started. Nate, I think the question is very relevant and something that Dr. Thomas mentioned a while ago resonated with me, and that is that the traditional era of academic programming may be coming to an end. And by that, I don't mean that we won't continue to award degrees, but there's also room for associate's degrees. There's room for workforce training and development and alternative ways of getting to the same destination. Each of us has got to figure out what is our niche in life. For some of us, it'll be college. For others, it'll be college and grad school. And for others, it may be some of the workforce training that can guide us towards getting gainful employment. And I'll give you an example that Nate Peterson is part of. It's called the Texas Rural Workforce Academy, and it is funded by a $1 million grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce. It is to help rural communities, including in Texas and other states. Prairie View A&M University applied for this grant, and we were awarded the grant a few months ago. So this program is underway. The idea is to provide workforce training and development to individuals who were displaced by Hurricane Harvey. I know that happened some 2-3 years ago, but the remnants are still being felt in our rural communities. So through things like certified nursing assistant, welding, electrical, construction, those kinds of certification programs, students, high school students, in some cases college students, unemployed individuals can apply for this, get trained free of cost, and get a certificate, then go and be gainful citizens out there in the community. So this has been very successful, judging from the fact that we only had 100 slots, and we got over 1,000 applications. So now the challenge is to have this continue and become sustainable. So this is an example where you don't have to have degrees, but by virtue of being an 1890 land-grant university, we are serving the needs of the people and the communities through our extension service. And I think the other point that Tiffany made is well taken, and that is the fact that being a land-grant university, the original idea back in the 1890s, through the Morrill Act, was making the university accessible to the people. But guess what? The cost of this education has made it all but inaccessible, because even though many of us can pay the cost up front, as in Dr. Thomas's case, that $35,000 loan is not going to get any smaller. It'll keep getting bigger because interest and then interest upon interest. So yeah, there's some accessibility, but what about the affordability, right? So access without being affordable, especially in the long run, may not be a win-win situation. But those are a couple of thoughts to put on the table.
And I agree with Dean D'Souza. I mean, he's spot on. I think, Nate, you mentioned about pivoting, but I call it pioneering, right? So we're in a place as a university to pioneer exactly what he's talking about. So what does accessibility mean, right? Do we always have to focus on the 18 to 22-year-old in terms of recruiting and retention? What about the retiree that probably needs to come back to the workforce because they're taking care of grandkids now? Because 65, most people are unable to retire at that age based on our current conditions. And so how are we looking at those individuals, those who have been displaced, those who are housing insecure, and provide them with training through a certificate program, right? So we have so we can actually remove the narrative of first generational college educated individuals. If we focus and pivot our curriculum and our classroom to the community, we actually can really influence an entire workforce in our region, and particularly in the state of Texas. And so I think that's a direction that everyone's having hard conversations about. What does it look like? Because again, we're pioneering what this is. And so I think that there's some models in place. I always go back to the extension model, which makes us as an institution very unique. We already have an extension from the institution into the community. So how do we expand that? How do we innovate that model? And then how do we respond directly to workforce ready, professional skill set, and academic needs? And frankly, from the comfort of their home, because that's what most of our students are. They're getting a 4-year degree in the comfort of their home, right? So what does academic rigor look like when you're not in a classroom with your peers? What does faculty support look like when, I have students who are in New York. I have students that are on the other side of Texas taking our courses, and they're prepared and they're staying on pace. And so I think this is a huge opportunity for us to really create and have a whole paradigm shift about the demand on the institution, and really removing those ivory walls, right? And make it truly accessible to all of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My cohort members, they refer to me as Mr. Land Grant University. I worked at a land grant university. I have an opportunity to pursue a terminal degree here at a HBCU, phenomenal institution who is kind of living and breathing the land-grant university mission. Dean, before we go on a break, I have one question for you. Now, you recently just got approved for a new academic program in the midst of COVID-19. Would you like to share your success?
Oh, you're talking about a new academic program?
Yes, the new was it a graduate degree?
Oh,
yes.
the Natural Resource and Environmental Science.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
So it is approved within the university, but it still has to be approved at other levels of the system. So this is an undergraduate degree and a master's degree in Natural Resource and Environmental Sciences. And we have more degrees that we're planning in the future, including master's degrees. But you're absolutely right, Nate. In the middle of a pandemic, the first time this college is proposing new degrees in some 25 years. So clearly very historic. And part of the reason for this is that, we talk so much about food security in the college and across the university, very important, and it's going to continue to grow in importance. But you can't have food security without environmental security and water security and so on. So what is the natural resource base upon which this food is produced and consumed, particularly for underserved communities? They're the ones who are disproportionately affected when there's climate change, when there's hurricanes, when there's floods, and so on. So these degrees make a lot of sense for an HBCU like Prairie View A&M University. So there's basically three things, and this is a little extra, a bonus, if you will, but here's my thinking. The future is going to be comprised of three things from my perspective. Clearly, food is important because without food, we can't be healthy. The second thing is health, and health through food and wellness and physical exercise and so on. But the third thing is carbon. The future economy is going to be carbon-based, and it's important for us in Texas because we're an energy-rich state. So I'm talking about alternative fuels, renewable fuels, I'm talking about climate change, and we're talking about carbon sequestration, and then ultimately a carbon tax. And I believe nationally, this may be a way to continue to fund higher education in the future through a carbon tax, because my generation created some of the problems of climate change, and it's up to future generations to solve this, but we can't expect them to solve it without giving them some of the tools. And one of the tools is to make this education affordable through things like a carbon tax.
Wow. Wow. Well, guys, that was a great segment one, great conversation piece. I love your insight. I love your perspectives. So right now we'll go on a commercial break and we'll join back to lead into our second half of our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Emma Joanna Thomas Smith. My perspective on philanthropy is that, from the beginning, students don't have money. And it costs to go to college. It always costs more than most people could afford, but now it really costs. And so the philanthropy, from my perspective, makes a difference in providing a high quality learning environment. But the scholarship piece, the scholarship piece is for me. That's where I'm passionate. You need to make sure that students don't leave college because they just can't afford to pay sometimes a small amount of money. So sustaining that momentum that comes with their progression through their matriculation, it takes money.
Thank you and welcome back. In this segment of discussion, we will be looking at budgetary management in the face of COVID-19. Our first point of conversation will be, and I'm just going direct to the questions so that we can manage time tonight. What policies can higher education administrators formulate and implement in times of budgetary deficits, or what we call shortfall, to maintain an effective and efficient running of the university, as well as uphold or maintain the standard and quality of education amidst COVID-19? And anybody can respond.
Tiffany, I'll let you take this away.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks, Dean. So that's a loaded question, right? So I think what every higher education leader is doing currently, and every faculty member, program chair, everyone's looking at their budget and realizing, again, that what we were working with in the past, which was tight then, will be completely different now. So speaking directly to the previous question about, recruiting and securing students to want to retain and stay in the program, again, we're still educating first generation college students that may not have the support system in place financially to stay in college and to pay for their tuition. And so what I can at least speak to what we've been doing and what I've been experiencing with colleagues on campus is, one, becoming more strategic in our philanthropic efforts. Prairie View's received several significant gifts. One of the most recent was $10 million to shore up our juniors and seniors just to get them to the finish line. So I think, from a high level administrator, and for those of you that are pursuing higher ed administration as a career and a path, not to be afraid and to not to limit yourself where you exclude the possibility of private-public partnerships. Because again, we're speaking to removing the ivory walls. And so you have an opportunity to make a compelling case to industry, to the community, to philanthropic partners about why your program needs to be supported and why the funding needs to be attached to it. So we can go ahead and do those very things. Make sure that we are training some of the best K through 12 teachers to come out of Prairie View. And our K through 12 teachers are dealing with a whole lot of issues. And, we have a very robust education program at Prairie View. So I think, looking at philanthropy, looking at private partnerships, how we can align. And as an example, Dean D'Souza, the graduate program that he mentioned, I'm curriculum chair for Graduate Council. So I remember when the proposal came through. And I think one of the ways on campus that we can look at becoming more efficient is how can we collaborate across campus? Right. And so a lot of times it's one thing to look at what's happening off campus and how we can align to major funders, but there's also power in our collaboration across campus. Right. So the very thing around climate change and environmental justice aligns with several of our community development courses. So we can have a unified front where we can present a model to say we're collaborating, we're effective, we're efficient, and we're going to be able to recruit a certain type of student. So I think that, we're not out of the woods yet. We have not been in this position a year. So for me, I'm unable to say what we can and cannot do because we might be in this position for a while. And I think once we can look back after a year, administrators at a certain level will be able to make some meaningful decisions as we move forward with our programs.
Thank you very much. The next question, Dr. D'Souza, do you have any contribution to this, or we can just move straight to the next?
I think Thomas was right on point with the fact that you have to look at unconventional ways of being able to finance and recruit and graduate many of these students. You can't just say that, well, we are not operating with what used to be normal. We're going to a new normal in terms of programming and education, and do it with a conventional financing model. They have to be in lockstep to have an optimum system. And simultaneously, something else she touched upon is the grade school system. And so often we get students at the university who don't have the requisite language skills, math skills. So a lot of college is remedial, and sometimes even students who are seniors, don't have the requisite writing skills, the so-called soft or essential skills to be effective in the workforce. So they have to get a graduate degree. And I'm one of those students who had gone to grad school to make something of myself. So I think we have to look at this as kind of a seamless educational system, from grade school to college and university to trade school for those who can't or don't want to go to college, and then finally graduate school as well.
Thank you very much. I think we have actually lavished on most of these conversations, but one more question I would just ask: how will administrators or even policy makers at the university level prioritize funding for planning and managing departmental activities like research, academics, personnel, and outreaches?
Well, that's easy. They are going to give it all to the foundational college of Prairie View A&M University, which is the College of Agriculture. No, I'm kidding, of course. There's nothing I would love more than that. But I think Dr. Thomas already touched upon this, and that is the fact that, let's talk about the Natural Resource and Environmental Sciences degree. As colleges of agriculture, we came up with the idea, we took it to the finish line, in this case, getting into the faculty senate, and Dr. Thomas and her committee saw fit to approve it. Thank you very much. But we have to do this in partnership with others, because really architecture plays a role in it through social justice and environmental justice in those areas. The same thing with community development, which is something the College of Architecture has. But guess what? The Extension Service has a community and economic development program area. And these folks go out in the field and help the communities with economic development, like the Texas Rural Workforce Academy I alluded to, with helping businesses get loans, and with other kinds of workforce development and economic development and community development efforts. So wouldn't it be great if we could combine forces between the colleges of agriculture and architecture, at least in these two areas? And likewise, there's so many other programs. Allied health is another good example. Prairie View A&M University can have a tremendous brand in the area of allied health. We have the kinesiology, we have the pre-med, we have nutrition, we have registered dietitian. And like I said a while ago, I think the future is going to be about three things, certainly from my perspective, the food part, the health part, and then the carbon part, representing climate change and so on. And all of the colleges at Prairie View A&M University have a role to play in all three of those areas. And ultimately, it's about being one university, about being the university that resonates with the HBCU community, but also beyond. How do we partner with other colleges and other universities in the greater Houston area to be able to offer some of these degrees, and then to figure out the way to pay for all of this? Clearly, we can't continue to operate as we do, because the funding model is already dated, both from the student's perspective as well as from the university's perspective.
Thank you, sir. I believe we've spoken so well tonight. I would like us to drop simple sentences just as to wrap up this segment on as departmental leaders and in the university, what issues may be unique in the forthcoming semester, and then I would like you to describe the keys to a successful financial management in your respective department.
So if I could add that, I think for higher education students that are pursuing their education leadership or administration, as we enter the spring in January, the Texas legislative session, I think you should become very familiar with how that process and that legislative session works. Much of our funding, we're state supported, but you have to master policy. You have to understand that in order to really be successful. And the reason why I say that is I was once told, if you're in business and not in politics, you need to get out of business. And I think you can take that to a variety of things. And so if you are pursuing higher education, you have to understand the policies in which you are governed and how your money is appropriated, why it's appropriated. And then if, quick history lesson, it wasn't until recently Prairie View was finally designated as an institution of first class with Texas A&M and the University of Texas, Austin, which changes the whole funding model, right? And so I think as we look at innovative ways and pivoting and trailblazing new paths for education and finance and how we sustain that, I think we have to keep our eyes on what happens in Austin, right? And making sure that we make a compelling case that our values here at this 1890 institution are represented in policy and legislation and bills that are filed, that they'll be hammering it out from January through May and possibly with a special session, which includes extended CARES dollars funding, which the universities had. How do we support those students that are struggling? A variety of things. So I think if we can just elevate that question for something more tangible and more tangible, like what you can take away as a student pursuing this terminal degree, I think that will be something in your toolkit most people are not paying attention to.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tiffany Thomas and Dr. D'Souza. We are very grateful to have you, and then we'll just take a brief commercial break right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Even though there is so much against us,
you will see me choose to protect myself and my community from the coronavirus by wearing a face covering.
Because it's going to take all of us thinking about one another.
And even with my face covered, you will see me.
You will see me as a mother, a wife, a friend.
As an athlete who gave everything to the game I love.
As a father, leading by example.
As a sister.
An entertainer.
As a champion for my people.
You will see me finding a light in a dark time.
To unlock our creativity and push our craft.
You will see me demanding the space to tell the stories that matter.
As a man who knows that tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Join us in wearing a face covering to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
Because covering your face is one small act of kindness that has the power to bring us together.
Hello, guys. So, as leaders, innovators, upcoming researchers, we hope that tonight's conversation inspired you, gave you insight, perspective on policies and strategies for effective budgeting and financing land-grant universities like Prairie View A&M University. I want to give a special thanks to my panelists, my co-hosts, and also the production team for delivering a great episode. See you guys next semester. I enjoyed it. And I wanted to give my panelists a closing remark. Would you guys like to say anything before we depart?
Yeah, thank you, Nate. You did a wonderful job. It's great to have you both as an employee of the college, but also as a student going on for a PhD in higher education. And so the challenges are there, but the opportunities far surpass the challenges. And that's the way that I approach running my college, is that every challenge we have to look at as an opportunity and to be able to seize that opportunity for the greater good. So I'm very optimistic that together we will overcome this pandemic. We will be stronger than ever before. And more importantly, we'll find new ways to collaborate and innovate. And I want to give my panelist, Dr. Thomas, kudos as well, and look forward to working with you on the Healthy Houston Initiative, which really is about taking the university to the people. And Stephen, thanks as well. It was a pleasure making your acquaintance on this show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I echo Dean D'Souza's comments. Really excited and appreciative of the opportunity to share with you tonight. We have some remarkable faculty, staff, and students, and I just really believe that whatever challenges meet us, we have exactly what we need in order to respond to it. And this is a perfect time for us to innovate and trailblaze. So I'm looking forward and ahead to once we turn the page on COVID-19, all of the ideas and the newness and the new paths that we're able to create together, because I am always impressed with my colleagues at Prairie View. And so I believe that the best is yet to come. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Good night. See you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.